Captain Lee Dongwu stood on the bridge of the human ship Indomitable and watched the massive alien space station grow larger on his screen. The Galactic Council headquarters looked like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness of space, its petals made of shining towers that reached out in all directions. Each tower belonged to a different alien race, and each one was bigger and more impressive than anything humans had ever built. Lee had been traveling for 3 months to reach this place, carrying messages of friendship and trade agreements from Earth. Dr. Park So-young walked up beside him, her tablet computer showing data about the alien species they would meet today. She had spent years studying the different races that made up the Galactic Council, learning their languages and customs. The aliens had contacted Earth 50 years ago when humans first developed faster-than-light travel, but the relationship had always been cold and distant. The aliens treated humans like children who had just learned to walk. The communications officer turned around in his chair and spoke to Lee. "Captain, we are receiving a docking assignment from the station control. They want us to use docking bay 712. Lee nodded, but felt something was wrong. He had studied the station layout during the long journey here, and Bay 712 was in the outer ring, far from the main council chambers. It was the kind of place where they put garbage ships and supply vessels. The Indomitable moved slowly toward its assigned docking bay, passing dozens of alien ships along the way. Some were as big as cities, with weapons that could destroy entire planets. Others were sleek and fast, covered in technology that humans could barely understand. Lee noticed that his ship was the smallest vessel in the entire docking area, and the only one that looked like it had been built by primitives. Inside the Hay Station, Lee and Park walked through corridors that seemed designed to make visitors feel small and unimportant. The ceilings were so high that they disappeared into shadows, and the walls were covered with symbols and writings from 1,000 different alien languages. Other species moved through these halls like they owned the place, their advanced technology floating beside them or built into their bodies. Some aliens were tall and thin like walking trees, while others were short and wide like living rocks. A few species looked almost human, but their eyes held intelligence that seemed ancient and cold. Counselor Jin Hee-jin met them at the entrance to the main council chamber. She had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 10 years, and the experience had changed her. When she first arrived, she had been excited and hopeful about humanity's place in the galaxy. Now she looked tired and frustrated, like someone who had been ignored for too long. "They will not listen to us today," Jin whispered as they walked toward the council chamber. "The vote was decided before we even arrived. War Prime Gorvash of the Vorthak Empire has convinced the others that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to expand into space." Lee felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his face calm. The Vorthak were a warrior race that had conquered dozens of worlds before joining the Galactic Council. They respected only strength and saw humans as weak because Earth had never built a great space empire. What they did not understand was that humans had spent most of their history fighting each other instead of exploring space, and this had made them very good at war. The council chamber was a huge round room with seats arranged in circles that went up toward the ceiling like the inside of a stadium. Hundreds of alien species sat in these seats, representing civilizations that were thousands of years older than humanity. At the center of the room was a raised platform where speakers could address the entire council. The air hummed with translation, devices that turned the sounds of different alien languages into words that everyone could understand. War Prime Gorvash stood up from his seat and walked to the center platform. He was 8 feet tall, with skin like black metal and 4 arms that ended in claws. When he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding stone. "Fellow council members, we gathered today to discuss the human problem. For 50 years, we have watched this young species stumble around the galaxy like children playing with fire. They fight wars on their own world even now, killing millions of their own kind for reasons that make no sense to civilized beings." Many council members made sounds of agreement. The Zelani Confederation representative, a being that looked like a floating crystal, spoke next. "The humans have shown no ability to control their violent impulses. They cannot even achieve peace on their own world. How can we trust them to behave properly in civilized space?" Jin stood up and requested permission to speak, but War Prime Gorvash ignored her. He continued his speech about human violence and unpredictability. He talked about Earth's wars and conflicts as if they were evidence that humans were monsters who could not be trusted. He did not mention that every alien species in the Council had also fought wars in their past, or that many of them had committed terrible crimes against weaker species. "I propose the Human Containment Protocol," Gorvash announced. "We will establish a blockade around the human solar system. No human ship will be allowed to leave, and no human colony will be permitted beyond their home system. This will protect the galaxy from human aggression while giving them time to learn proper behavior." The vote happened quickly. Most Council members supported the containment protocol without even discussing it. A few species abstained, but none voted against it. Jin's objections were ignored, and her requests to speak were denied. The decision was made in less than an hour, sealing humanity's fate with the casual indifference of beings who thought they were superior. After the vote, War Prime Gorvash approached Lee and his team. His 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he delivered the Council's ultimatum. "Captain Lee Dongwu, you and your ship will return to Earth immediately. Any human vessel that attempts to leave your solar system after tomorrow will be destroyed. Any human colony beyond Earth will be evacuated by force. This is the will of the Galactic Council, and it will be enforced." Lee looked at the alien warrior for a long moment without speaking. Around them, hundreds of alien representatives were leaving the chamber, chattering excitedly about other business now that the human problem had been solved. Park stood beside Lee with her tablet, recording everything for the report they would send back to Earth. Jin looked defeated, her years of diplomatic work reduced to nothing by a vote that had been decided before it began. Finally, Lee spoke, in a voice that was calm and quiet but somehow made Gorvash take a step backward. "You have made a grave mistake." He did not shout or threaten or show any emotion, but something in his tone made several nearby aliens stop and listen. "You think you know humans, but you have only seen what we wanted you to see. You think we are weak because we fight among ourselves, but you do not understand that this fighting has made us strong. You are about to learn something that every human child knows from birth." War Prime Gorvash leaned forward with his claws extended, expecting the human to show fear or back down. Instead, Lee smiled slightly and continued speaking in that same calm voice. "Never corner a predator unless you are absolutely certain you can kill it." Lee turned and walked toward the exit with Park and Jin following behind him. As they left the chamber, he activated his communication device and sent a message on all galactic frequencies. The message was short and simple, but it reached every ship and every station and every world in the galaxy at the same time. "This is Captain Lee Dongwu of the human vessel Indomitable, broadcasting to all listening civilizations. The Galactic Council has chosen to treat humanity as an enemy. You have made a grave mistake. You wanted to see what humans do when threatened. Now you will learn." The message ended, and Lee walked back to his ship in silence. Behind him, alien security forces were already mobilizing to enforce the blockade. War fleets were being assembled and weapons were being prepared. The galaxy was about to discover that sometimes the smallest predator is the most dangerous one. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood in the war room deep beneath the Pacific Ocean and watched the emergency meeting unfold on dozens of screens around him. World leaders from every nation on Earth were connected to this secure facility, their faces showing fear and confusion as they tried to understand what the alien ultimatum meant for humanity. The president of Korea spoke first, his voice shaking as he read the translated message from the Galactic Council. "They want us to stay in our solar system. Forever," the president said. "They say we are too violent and dangerous to be trusted in the galaxy. Many of our advisors think we should accept their demands and try to negotiate better terms later." Other leaders nodded in agreement, talking about diplomatic solutions and peaceful compromises. They did not understand that the time for diplomacy had ended the moment the aliens decided to treat humanity like children who needed to be locked in their room. Admiral Kim listened to the politicians argue for several minutes before he finally spoke. His voice was calm and steady, but it carried the authority of someone who had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. "The aliens have made their choice, and now we must make ours. I am activating the Shadow Protocol. All hidden assets are now operational." The politicians stopped talking and stared at Kim in confusion. Most of them had never heard of the Shadow Protocol, and those who knew about it thought it was just a theoretical plan that would never be used. Kim touched a control panel on his desk, and new screens appeared around the room showing star maps and ship positions that had been classified at the highest levels of government. For the past 30 years, humanity has been preparing for exactly this situation, Kim explained, as the screens showed hidden military bases scattered throughout human space. When we first made contact with the aliens, some of us realized that peaceful coexistence might not be possible. While our diplomats were trying to make friends, our military was getting ready for war. Commander Choi Min-ho appeared on one of the screens, broadcasting from a secret base near Jupiter. Behind him, massive warships were emerging from camouflaged hangars that had been hidden inside asteroids for decades. These ships looked nothing like the peaceful exploration vessels that humans had been showing to the aliens. They were built for war, with armor plating and weapon systems that could challenge anything the galaxy had to offer. "The Shadow Fleet is ready, Admiral," Choi reported. 47 capital ships, 300 destroyers, and over 1,000 fighter craft. All crews are at battle stations and waiting for orders. The politicians stared at the screen in shock, unable to believe that such a massive military force had been built in secret without their knowledge. Engineer Bae Ji-won joined the conversation from her laboratory on Mars, where she had been developing advanced weapons technology for the past 20 years. She was a small woman who looked like she belonged in a university classroom, but her inventions could change the course of galactic history. "The adaptive defense systems are online and ready for deployment," she announced. "Our ships can now analyze and counter alien weapons in real time." General Oh Sang-wook connected from a classified location somewhere in Earth's asteroid belt. He commanded the Special Operations Forces that had been secretly gathering intelligence on alien military capabilities for years. "We have detailed information on every major alien fleet in the galaxy," he said. "Their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. They know almost nothing about our real military strength." Back on the alien space station, Dr. Park So-young was using her scientific equipment to intercept and analyze alien communications. She had discovered something that made her extremely worried about humanity's chances in the coming conflict. The alien messages she was reading showed that they were not just planning to blockade Earth, they were preparing to invade and occupy the entire human solar system. "Captain Lee," she said quietly as they walked back toward their ship, "the aliens are not just trying to contain us. They are planning to take over our worlds and turn us into slaves. The Vorthak Empire has done this to dozens of other species over the centuries." Lee nodded grimly, having suspected that the aliens' true intentions were worse than they had publicly announced. As the Indomitable prepared to leave the alien station, Park continued monitoring the enemy communications network. What she found there surprised her more than anything else she had discovered about the galactic civilizations. The alien species had become weak and complacent after thousands of years of peace and prosperity. Their military technology had not improved significantly in centuries because they had not needed to fight any real wars. They think war is just a matter of showing up with bigger ships and more powerful weapons, Park explained to Lee as they reviewed the intelligence data. They have forgotten what real combat looks like. Their battle tactics are formal and predictable, like some kind of ceremonial dance rather than actual fighting. Meanwhile, the alien fleets were beginning to move toward Earth's solar system. War Prime Gorvash commanded the largest invasion force in Vorthak history, with over 2,000 warships and support vessels. The Zelani Confederation was sending their most advanced technology ships, believing that their superior science would make victory inevitable. 6 other major species were contributing their own fleets to what they expected would be an easy conquest of the human worlds. What none of them knew was that every human diplomatic mission over the past 50 years had been secretly gathering detailed intelligence on alien military capabilities. Ships like the Indomitable carried hidden sensors and communication equipment that had been mapping alien space and recording their defense systems. The humans the aliens had dismissed as primitive explorers were actually highly trained intelligence operatives. Captain Lee activated his ship's hidden communication array and began transmitting coded messages to Admiral Kim back on Earth. The data included detailed information about alien ship positions, weapon capabilities, and military protocols. This intelligence would give the human fleet a massive advantage in the coming battle, but Lee knew that information alone would not be enough to win a war against such overwhelming numbers. The real advantage humanity possessed was something The aliens could not understand or measure with their advanced technology. Humans had never stopped fighting wars among themselves, and this constant conflict had kept their military skills sharp and their weapons technology advancing. While the aliens had grown soft during their long peace, humans had continued to develop new ways to kill their enemies. Engineer Bay's workshops on Mars and the Moon had been secretly producing weapons that no alien civilization had ever seen before. These included adaptive armor that could adjust to different types of energy weapons, stealth systems that could make human ships nearly invisible to alien sensors, and new types of missiles that could change their attack patterns in mid-flight. General O's special operations teams had spent years infiltrating alien worlds and installations, learning their languages and customs while gathering intelligence about their military weaknesses. They had discovered that most alien species relied too heavily on their advanced technology and had forgotten the importance of individual skill and tactical flexibility in combat. As the human ships began moving toward their battle positions, Admiral Kim sent one final message to all military commanders throughout the solar system. The aliens think they know what humans are capable of because they have watched us fight each other for 50 years. They see our wars as evidence of primitive barbarism, but they do not understand that war has been our greatest teacher. Every battle we have fought on Earth has taught us something new about combat and survival. Every weapon we have developed has been tested against human opponents who were just as intelligent and determined as we are. The aliens have had peace for so long that they have forgotten what it means to face an enemy who refuses to give up. The message continued with detailed battle plans and tactical instructions, but it ended with something that every human soldier and sailor understood without being told. We are not fighting for conquest or glory or resources. We are fighting for the right to exist as free beings in this galaxy. Show them what humans do when someone tries to take away our freedom. As the alien invasion fleets approached the edge of Earth's solar system, they expected to find a small number of primitive human ships fleeing in panic from their overwhelming force. Instead, they found something that would change their understanding of warfare forever. The humans were not running away from the fight. They were preparing to start one that would teach the galaxy why peaceful species should never threaten a race that had never truly known peace. Fleet Marshal Krex stood on the command bridge of his flagship and watched the human solar system appear on his tactical displays. The Vorthak's 7th Battle Fleet had traveled for 2 weeks to reach this primitive corner of the galaxy, and Krex expected the coming battle to be over within a few hours. His force included 300 warships, each one capable of destroying an entire planet, and he had fought in dozens of campaigns against species far more advanced than the humans. The humans had built their defensive line at the edge of their solar system, where the gravity of their star was weakest and space was filled with chunks of ice and rock. Krex could see their ships on his long-range sensors, but the readings made no sense to his tactical officers. The human vessels appeared to be small cargo ships and exploration craft, nothing that could pose a threat to proper military vessels. Captain Yoon Jae-sung watched the alien fleet approach from his position on the bridge of the battleship Defiant. His ship looked like a modified mining vessel from the outside, but hidden beneath its disguised hull were weapons and defensive systems that had never been tested in real combat. Around him, other human ships maintained their positions, while their crews prepared for the first real battle between humanity and the galactic civilizations. Lieutenant Nam Yu-jin sat in the cockpit of her fighter craft, one of 50 small ships that were hidden inside what appeared to be a damaged space station. The aliens had dismissed this station as wreckage from some ancient accident, but it was actually a carefully constructed trap that would soon release a swarm of human fighters into their formation. Nam had spent years training for this moment, learning to fight in ways that no alien pilot had ever imagined. The Vorthak fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their massive ships arranged in geometric patterns that looked impressive, but made them easy targets for anyone who understood modern warfare. Fleet Marshal Krex opened communication channels to the human defenders and delivered the traditional ultimatum that he had used against dozens of other species. Human vessels, you are ordered to surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Your species has been judged unfit for galactic civilization, and your worlds will now be placed under Vorthak administration. Any resistance will be met with the complete destruction of your fleet and the bombardment of your planets. Captain Yoon activated his communication system and responded with words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. Fleet Marshal Krex of the Vortak Empire, this is Captain Yoon Jae-sung of the Human Defense Force. Your threats do not frighten us, and your demands are refused. If you want our worlds, you will have to take them from us, and we promise you that the cost will be higher than you can imagine. Krex laughed at the human response, a sound like grinding metal that echoed through his command bridge. He had heard similar defiance from other species before they learned the futility of resisting. Vortak military might. He gave the order for his fleet to attack, expecting the human ships to flee or surrender as soon as they saw the power of advanced alien weapons. The battle began with a massive display of Vortak firepower, energy beams that could melt mountains, struck the human defensive line, and explosive missiles that could crack moons streaked through space toward their targets. The aliens expected to see human ships vaporized instantly, but what happened instead made their tactical computers malfunction in confusion. Technician Ko Yun-soo watched her defensive systems analyze the incoming alien weapons and adjust the ship's protective shields accordingly. Engineer Bay's adaptive defense technology was working exactly as designed, studying each enemy attack and developing countermeasures in real time. The energy beams that should have destroyed human ships were absorbed and redirected, while the explosive missiles were neutralized by defensive fields that the aliens had never seen before. The Vortak fleet fired again with even more powerful weapons, but the results were the same. Human ships that should have been reduced to scrap metal continued to fight back with weapons that seemed to grow more effective with each exchange. What Fleet Marshal Krex did not understand was that human military technology had been designed by people who expected their enemies to adapt and improve during combat. Lieutenant Nam received the signal to launch her attack and pushed her fighter craft out of the hidden bay where it had been waiting. Around her, 49 other human pilots emerged from concealment and began their assault on the alien formation. The Vortak had never faced an enemy that used small, fast ships to attack their massive vessels, and their weapons were not designed to target such small and agile opponents. The human fighters moved through the alien formation like deadly insects, too small and quick for the big guns to track, but armed with weapons that could damage even the largest warships. Nam led her squadron in attack patterns that had been developed during centuries of human aerial combat, using tactics that the aliens found impossible to predict or counter. While the fighters created chaos in their formation, the larger human ships began their own offensive. Captain Yoon's Defiant appeared to take damage from alien weapons and began drifting toward the enemy fleet as if its engines had been disabled. Fleet Marshal Krex ordered his ships to close in and capture the apparently helpless human vessel, not realizing that he was falling into a carefully planned trap. When the Vortak ships were close enough to see the individual details of the Defiant's hull, the human battleship suddenly came alive with weapons that had been hidden until this moment. Energy cannons emerged from concealed ports, and missile launchers that had appeared to be damaged opened fire at point-blank range. The nearest alien ships were destroyed so quickly that their crews had no time to send distress signals. The surprise attack threw the entire Vortak formation into confusion as other human ships revealed their true nature and began fighting with tactics that no galactic civilization had seen for thousands of years. Instead of standing in formation and trading shots like civilized warriors, the humans moved constantly, used cover and concealment, and coordinated their attacks in ways that made their small fleet seem much larger than it actually was. Fleet Marshal Krex tried to rally his forces and impose order on the battle, but human tactics made this impossible. Every time he thought he understood their strategy, the humans would change their approach and attack from a completely different direction. His ships were designed to fight other civilized fleets in formal battles, not to deal with an enemy that refused to follow the established rules of galactic warfare. The turning point came when Krex realized that his flagship was isolated from the rest of his fleet by the chaotic movements of the human ships. He had fallen for another trap, and now the most powerful vessel in his force was surrounded by human fighters and smaller warships that were attacking from all directions at once. Captain Yoon's voice came through the communication system one final time as the human ships closed in for the kill. Fleet Marshal Krex, you came here expecting to fight primitives who would cower before your advanced technology. Instead, you found humans who have been preparing for this war since the day we first learned we were not alone in the universe. Your mistake was thinking that peace made you strong, when all it did was make you soft. The Vorthak flagship exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from Earth, taking Fleet Marshal Krex and his entire command staff with it. The remaining alien ships tried to retreat, but human fighters and fast attack craft pursued them relentlessly, destroying or capturing most of them before they could escape the solar system. When the battle was over, only a handful of Vorthak ships remained to carry news of the defeat back to their homeworlds. Lieutenant Nam landed her fighter on the deck of the Defiant and climbed out to find Captain Yoon waiting for her with a smile of grim satisfaction. Around them, human crews were already working to repair battle damage and prepare for the next attack. The victory celebration was brief because everyone knew that this was only the beginning of the war. The aliens would return with larger fleets and better weapons, but they would also be coming with the knowledge that humans were far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy had imagined. The message that Fleet Marshal Krex had tried to send, with his dying breath, was received by alien commanders throughout the galaxy, and its contents would change everything they thought they knew about warfare. "They fight like demons," the message said. "How did we not see this coming?" Supreme Admiral Thys of the Zilani Confederation floated in her crystal command chamber and studied the tactical reports from the destroyed Vorthak fleet. The readings made no sense to her advanced analytical systems, but the conclusion was undeniable. Somehow, the primitive humans had defeated one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. The Zilani prided themselves on their superior intellect and advanced technology, and Thys was certain that the Vorthak had simply underestimated their opponents. The emergency session of the Galactic Council lasted for 3 days as species. After species pledged their fleets to the war against humanity, the destruction of the Vorthak's 7th battle fleet had shocked the galaxy. But most civilizations believed it was just a fluke that would not be repeated when faced with overwhelming numbers. War Prime Gorvash himself had survived the battle and was calling for total war against the human species. Dr. Kang Hyun-woo worked in his laboratory deep beneath the surface of the moon, making final preparations for the next phase of humanity's defense plan. For 15 years, he had been developing something called the Quantum Cascade Network, a system of hidden transmitters that had been secretly placed on worlds throughout the galaxy during decades of peaceful exploration. The aliens thought these devices were simple communication relays, but they were actually weapons designed to disrupt the technological foundation of galactic civilization. Commodore Lee Subin received her orders while her Deep Strike Force was hiding in the asteroid field beyond Pluto. Her mission was to attack alien shipyards and supply bases throughout the galaxy, not to destroy them, but to capture them and turn alien technology against its creators. The plan was incredibly dangerous because it required human forces to strike deep into enemy territory while outnumbered by millions to one. The second wave of alien attacks began when 7 different species launched coordinated assaults on human colonies and outposts throughout the solar system. Supreme Admiral Thys led the Zilani fleet toward Mars, confident that her advanced warships could succeed where the primitive Vorthak had failed. The Rokani Empire sent their bioships toward Jupiter's moons, while the Theta Collective deployed their mechanical drones against human mining operations in the asteroid belt. What none of them expected was that Dr. Kang would activate his Quantum Cascade Network at the moment their fleets entered human space. The hidden transmitters began broadcasting signals that interfered with alien technology on a fundamental level, causing their advanced computers to malfunction and their navigation systems to provide false information. Ships that had traveled between stars for thousands of years suddenly found themselves lost in space with no way to determine their location. The chaos spread throughout the galaxy as the quantum cascade effect reached worlds that were light years away from the battle zones. Alien communication networks collapsed as their signals were scrambled by the human transmitters. Supply convoys became lost when their guidance systems failed, and military commanders found themselves unable to coordinate their forces or receive updates from their governments. Colonel Seo Mi-jung led the first human ground assault on an alien world when her forces captured a Vorthak supply depot near the edge of their territory. What they found there horrified even soldiers who had seen the worst of human warfare. The depot contained thousands of beings from dozens of different species, all of them slaves who had been captured when their worlds were conquered by the galactic civilizations. The aliens told us they were bringing peace and order to the galaxy. Colonel Seo reported to Admiral Kim as her forces liberated the slave camps. But what they really built was an empire based on the suffering of weaker species. Every one of these prisoners has a story about how the civilized galaxy destroyed their homes and enslaved their people. The liberated slaves included species that the Galactic Council claimed had never existed, races that had been erased from history after being conquered and enslaved. Many of them had technological knowledge that rivaled or exceeded that of their captors, but they had been forced to use their skills to build weapons for the empires that had destroyed their worlds. Commodore Lee's Deep Strike Force achieved their first major victory when they captured a Zilani shipyard in a system that was supposed to be heavily defended. The attack succeeded because the quantum cascade effects had disabled most of the alien defense systems, allowing human ships to approach undetected. Within hours, human engineers were studying Zilani technology and beginning to incorporate it into their own vessels. The psychological impact of these raids was even more devastating than their military value. For thousands of years, the galactic civilizations had believed that their home systems were completely safe from attack. The idea that primitive humans could strike at the heart of their empires was so shocking that many alien governments refused to believe the reports from their own military commanders. Captain Lee Dong-woo, now commanding a fleet of captured alien vessels, led a series of lightning raids against military installations throughout Vorthak space. His ships looked like standard Vorthak warships from the outside, but they were crewed by humans who had studied alien technology for decades and knew how to use it more effectively than its original designers. The most successful of these raids targeted the Vorthak Military Academy on their homeworld, where the Empire trained its future generals and admirals. Lee's forces captured the entire facility and its database of military knowledge, giving humanity access to thousands of years of Vorthak tactical doctrine and strategic planning. More importantly, they liberated over 10,000 alien students and instructors who had been forced to serve the Empire against their will. Engineer Bai Ji-won established her new research facility inside a captured Zilani space station, where she began combining human and alien technology in ways that neither species had ever imagined. Her hybrid weapons and defensive systems were so advanced that even human scientists had trouble understanding how they worked, but their effectiveness in battle was undeniable. The war began to turn in humanity's favor as more alien fleets fell, victim to human tactics and technology. The quantum cascade effects made it impossible for the galactic civilizations to coordinate their massive military forces, while human raiders struck at targets throughout their territories with impunity. Worse still, the liberated slave populations were joining the human cause and providing intelligence about alien weaknesses and hidden military installations. Supreme Admiral Theiss finally reached Mars after weeks of navigating through space that her instruments could no longer properly map, only to find that the planet's defenses had been reinforced by technology from a dozen different alien species. The human defenders were now using Vorthak heavy weapons, Zilani energy shields, and defensive systems that had been designed by races she had never heard of. The battle for Mars lasted 3 days and ended with the complete destruction of the Zilani Confederation's most advanced fleet. Supreme Admiral Theiss herself was captured when her flagship was disabled by weapons that used her own technology against her. As human boarding parties secured her vessel, she realized that the war was already lost, even though most of the galaxy did not yet know it. Dr. Kang expanded his quantum cascade network to include the captured alien transmitters, creating a web of interference that stretched across half the galaxy. Alien civilizations that had ruled space for millennia found themselves isolated on their home worlds, unable to communicate with their colonies or coordinate their military forces. Their advanced technology had become a weakness that humanity could exploit. The final phase of the campaign began when General O's special operations teams activated sleeper agents who had been placed throughout alien space over the past 50 years. These agents, many of them humans who had lived among alien populations for decades, began sabotaging critical infrastructure and providing intelligence to human military commanders. Captain Lee transmitted another message on all galactic frequencies, this one directed at the alien populations rather than their governments. People of the galaxy, your leaders told you that humans were too violent and dangerous to be trusted with freedom. They were right about one thing. We are dangerous to anyone who tries to enslave us or deny us our basic rights. But we offer something your civilized empires never could, the chance to be truly free. The message continued with an offer that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Any species that wishes to join us in building a new kind of civilization, one based on freedom rather than conquest, will be welcomed as equals. Any government that continues to support the enslavement of sentient beings will be treated as an enemy. The choice is yours, but choose quickly, because this war will not last much longer. As the message spread throughout the galaxy, rebellions began breaking out on worlds that had been under alien control for centuries. The slaves that human forces had liberated were returning to their home systems with weapons and tactical knowledge, ready to fight for their freedom. The great galactic empires were crumbling from within as their subject populations rose up against their oppressors. The aliens had wanted to contain humanity within their solar system, believing that isolation would make them weak and harmless. Instead, President Han Da-un stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council and looked out at the faces of alien representatives who had once dismissed humanity as primitive and violent. 6 months had passed since the war began, and the great civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years now sat as defeated supplicants, waiting to learn what terms the victorious humans would impose upon them. The council chamber looked very different than it had during humanity's first visit. Half of the seats were now occupied by representatives of species that had been enslaved or oppressed by the former galactic powers, beings who had been freed by human military forces and were experiencing self-determination for the first time in centuries. The other half contained the remnants of the old empires, their military forces destroyed, and their home worlds occupied by human peacekeeping forces. War Prime Gorvash sat in chains, his forearms bound with restraints made from his own species' metal. The proud Vorthak warrior who had initiated the conflict looked old and broken, his empire reduced to a handful of worlds that survived only because humans had shown mercy to their civilian populations. Beside him, other former leaders of the galactic civilizations waited to learn their fate. Admiral Park Jin-woo, brother of Dr. Park So-young, commanded the occupation forces that now maintained order throughout the former alien territories. His fleets consisted of captured alien vessels crewed by humans and liberated slaves working together, a symbol of the new cooperative civilization that was emerging from the ashes of the old galactic order. Dr. Park So-young took her place at the speaker's podium and began to present her analysis of why humanity had achieved such a decisive victory over opponents who possessed superior technology and vastly greater numbers. Her words would be studied by historians and military strategists for generations to come, but their immediate purpose was to help the former enemy understand how completely they had misunderstood the species they had chosen to threaten. The fundamental error made by the previous galactic order was assuming that our constant warfare made us primitive and weak, Dr. Park explained, as her data appeared on screens throughout the chamber. In fact, the opposite was true. While your species achieved peace and prosperity, you also became complacent and soft. You forgot what it meant to face an opponent who was truly determined to fight for survival. She showed images of human history, the endless conflicts and competitions that had shaped human civilization from its earliest days. Every war we fought taught us something new about combat and strategy. Every weapon we developed was tested against opponents who were just as intelligent and resourceful as we were. When we finally encountered alien civilizations, we had already spent thousands of years learning how to defeat enemies who knew all our strengths and weaknesses. The alien representatives listened in stunned silence as Dr. Park continued her analysis. She explained how human military doctrine had been designed to fight against technologically superior opponents, using tactics and strategies that emphasized adaptability and innovation over raw firepower. The galaxy's civilizations had been so focused on their advanced technology that they had forgotten the importance of the beings who operated that technology. Your species made war into a ritual, she said, displaying recordings of alien battle tactics from the recent conflict. You followed predictable patterns and formal procedures that made you easy to defeat once we understood your methods. Humans never developed such formal approaches to warfare because our enemies were always trying to surprise us with new tactics and strategies. Ambassador Song Hae-young stood up to present the terms of the new Galactic Accord that would replace the old council system. The document had been written by humans, but incorporated suggestions from dozens of liberated species who had contributed their own ideas about how a truly free galactic civilization should function. The new galactic government will be based on principles of individual freedom and species self-determination, Ambassador Song announced. No species will be permitted to conquer or enslave another. All sentient beings will have the right to govern themselves and determine their own futures. Any group that attempts to impose their will on others through force will face the combined military might of the new Galactic Defense Force. The Defense Force would be commanded by Admiral Kim Tae-ho, with officers drawn from human military services and the liberated species who had proven themselves during the recent war. The fleet would consist of the most advanced vessels from dozens of different civilizations, crewed by beings who had learned to work together despite their different backgrounds and cultures. General Oh Sang-wook took control of the new galactic justice system, which would be responsible for hunting down war criminals and ensuring that the atrocities committed by the old empires could never happen again. His investigators had already uncovered evidence of genocide and mass slavery that shocked even humans who thought they understood the depths of alien cruelty. The trials would be conducted according to human legal principles, with defendants given the right to present their case and defend their actions. However, the evidence against leaders like War Prime Gorvash was so overwhelming that most observers expected the proceedings to be brief and the sentences to be severe. Engineer Bae Ji-won established the new Galactic Technology Council, which would oversee the sharing of scientific knowledge among all member species. For the first time in galactic history, advanced technology would be available to everyone rather than being hoarded by a few powerful civilizations. The Council would also ensure that new weapons technology was developed only for defensive purposes. Dr. Kang Hyun-woo's quantum cascade network was being converted into a communication system that would connect every world in the galaxy, allowing instant communication between species that had been isolated from each other for centuries. The same technology that had been used to disrupt alien military forces would now help build a truly unified galactic community. Captain Lee Dong-woo received command of the new flagship Unity, a massive vessel that incorporated the best technology from every species in the galaxy. His mission would be to explore the unknown regions of space and make first contact with any new civilizations they might encounter, carrying a very different message than the one the old galactic powers had brought to recently discovered species. Commodore Lee Subin took charge of the Colonial Development Program, which would help newly liberated species establish colonies and rebuild their civilizations. Many of these races had been slaves for so long that they had forgotten how to govern themselves, and they would need assistance in developing the skills and institutions necessary for self-rule. Colonel Seo Mi-jung established the Galactic Refugee Agency, which would help displaced populations find new homes and rebuild their lives. The agency would also work to reunite families and communities that had been separated by the slave trade, a process that would take decades to complete, but was essential for healing the wounds left by centuries of oppression. As the ceremony concluded, President Han made one final speech that would define humanity's role in the new galactic order. "We did not fight this war to become conquerors or rulers," she said, her words being translated into hundreds of different languages. "We fought because we were threatened with extinction, and we won because we were willing to do whatever was necessary to preserve our freedom. Now we offer that same freedom to every sentient being in the galaxy. We will protect the weak from the strong, defend the innocent from those who would exploit them, and ensure that no species ever again has to face the choice between slavery and death. This is our promise to the galaxy, and we will keep it no matter what the cost." The new Galactic Accord was signed by representatives of over 300 species, including many races that the old council had claimed did not exist. For the first time in galactic history, every sentient being had a voice in their own government and a guarantee that their rights would be protected. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of the Unity and watched as the first joint human-alien colony ship departed for an unexplored system. The vessel contained families from a dozen different species, all of them working together to build something that had never existed before, a truly free and cooperative civilization. Dr. Park joined him at the observation deck, looking out at the stars that now held promise instead of threat. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked, thinking about the millions of aliens who had died during the war and the civilizations that had been destroyed. Lee considered her question for a long moment before answering. "The aliens gave us a choice between freedom and slavery, and we chose freedom. Everything that happened after that was their responsibility, not ours. We offered them peace and cooperation, but they wanted war and conquest. They got what they asked for. As the Unity prepared for its first mission to unexplored space, Lee activated the ship's communication system and sent a message toward the unknown regions of the galaxy. The message would travel at the speed of light, reaching distant civilizations years or decades in the future, but its contents would make clear what they could expect if they encountered humanity. This is Captain Lee Dong-woo of the Galactic Defense Force, broadcasting to any civilizations that may be listening.